Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be covering the Campfire chat that the developers had today on Friday. Now this video will be coming out the next day on Saturday morning, so this will be happening yesterday your time. So basically we're going to be talking about everything that they mentioned with the upcoming patch 1.1.1. Now they shared a ton of information, including a ton of changes to every single class. Now I have the slides that they shared with us in front of us, and I'm not going to read every single detail as Sorcerer alone has 6 pages of these slides. I'm going to hit the main topics. We're going to go through everything big that's changing to get ready for 1.1.1. So with that, let's jump right into it. Now as we start off here with Sorcerer, we can see that they are changing a lot of the skills. And they explained in the live stream that the skills that aren't being used, they're going to give them buffs. So everything we're seeing with every single class is buffs, which is a great thing to hear, as none of us want any more nerfs, especially after the preseason patch. So look at here, we can see that Flickering Firebolt, Fireball, and Chain Lightning are all getting some pretty significant buffs to make them more feasible in Season 1. Now as we look at some other stuff that they're doing, now as we look at the next page, we see that they are also changing some passives. And again, we have nothing but buffs here, and everything is great, as the Sorcerer and the Barbarian really need some work. And they did state in the live stream that that is what this patch is focused on, but they are introducing changes to all the other classes as well. Now they mentioned in the future the other classes are going to get bigger changes like Sorcerer and Barbarian did, but just not yet. They really wanted to focus on Sorcerer and Barbarian as they felt they were underachieving in this season. Now I do highly recommend, if you are a Sorcerer Barbarian, to pause this video on the slides so you can read all the slides, as I'm not going to be able to go through everything because we have a lot to cover. I don't want to take up your whole day. So as you can see here, we have some changes to the Paragon board and some rare glyphs and some legendary nodes, which can be a huge difference in the build. So overall, I would highly recommend everything checking these out. Now again, more Paragon changes. They made the most Paragon changes for Sorcerer. They buffed a few of the skills, 3 passives, and then everything else is in the Paragon board. So they felt Sorcerer was doing well in the early game. They felt Sorcerer really started to fail and do badly in the upper end game, and that's why they're buffing the Paragon board, so you see these in the future as longer as you play the game. Next up, we have some legendary aspects where they changed a lot. Not only did they change some legendary aspects, but they also changed some uniques. Now with the uniques, they didn't change the fundamentals of the uniques. What they did is they took some of the non-meta skills and upgrades that these had, and they changed them to something that would work better. Like for instance, one thing on the Sorcerers that they did is in one of the unique slots, they had something that increased movement speed. Well, Sorcerers really don't need that much movement speed as they already have a lot built into the class. And so what they did is actually change that out with a critical hit strike percentage upgrade. Now this greatly increased the damage and the effectiveness of the unique. Now again, we have some similar stuff here with the legendary aspects, just not quite as strong, as they're really emphasizing making uniques more of a fundamental part of builds. Because right now, most builds don't even need them, and they don't want the game to actually just completely move past uniques. They want to keep them relevant, and that is a big part of 1.1.1. So as we move on here, more legendary aspects. They changed almost every single legendary aspect for Sorcerer, which is some huge buffs as we go through here. Now finally we get to the uniques, as you can see what they've changed here, and overall I think these were some really good changes for Sorcerer. Now again, Barbarian, this is the second focus of 1.1.1, and we can see here they have a ton of upgrades to skills, passives, legendaries. Here, I'll go back real quick so you guys can pause the video. And then finally we get on to the legendary aspects where they changed a lot. Now in Barbarian, they didn't change as much of the Paragon board. So it makes us think that overall they think Barbarian is weaker in the leveling aspect than in the end game, which is a really interesting aspect to look at it. And overall, that's kind of what they confirmed by saying it. They didn't say it word for word, but from these changes, that's what we can kind of deduce from these. Now again, they had a lot more uniques on Barbarian getting buffed and used. And there were 1 or 2 uniques on Barbarian that were absolutely required. And I think this is the change they're making just to make it so that there's more uniques that are viable in the different builds. Now, as you can see, the Barbarian ones were quite a bit shorter because we didn't have all the Paragon board changes, and now we're on to Rogue. Now, in the other classes, there's not going to be as much of a change. There are small buffs to every single class, and we'll go through those now. As you can see, a few bonuses and some buffs to the skills of Rogue, to our passives, and to our legendary aspects. And we even got some unique changes. Now we move on to Druid, where we had quite a few skills getting some small upgrades. Now this is nothing like what Barbarian and Sorcerer got, but still, buffs are buffs, and I am here for it all the way. Again, more skills, some legendaries, and some class mechanics, which is the lucky hit percent chance from overload on Druid, which definitely is going to make a lot of difference for those overloaded Druids. Now, Necromancer, this is the one I'm partial to, as I am maining a Necromancer. I actually have 2 Necromancers this season already, one at level 70 and one at level 90, to test out different builds for you guys. There's going to be lots of builds coming in the future, and I just released an amazing Necromancer build on the channel today. So if you want to see that, check it out. It'll be in the comments and in the description down below. Now look at this. We have some skills, some bone spirits. This is great, honestly. Everything I'm seeing here. So the Wither legendary is getting a pretty decent buff. You know, the exposed flesh is getting a pretty decent buff. Everything here basically to help with essence and a little bit of move speed. And we can see your aspect of decay, torment, and hulking aspect. I'm honestly really happy with these changes because a lot of my builds use these aspects. That means they're just going to get even stronger. And again, we can see here on the uniques, they replaced an intelligence affix for a bonus speed movement, which is very much needed on the Necromancer as they are extremely slow. Now we had some pretty big changes to minions, which will make our minion users much stronger. As you can see, Balrog, the world boss, will be doing less damage with his fire breath, but not only that, the elite affixes, fire enchanted, electrified obelisks, and shock lance will not be doing as much damage to our minions. Now we don't have an exact number for how much they're reducing them by yet, but that is huge, as late game, if you're not careful, your minions can get one shot even with a super tanky minion setup. So I'm super happy to see this is going to make a lot more builds a lot more viable. Now we move on here. We have some changes to some of the malignant hearts. So you can see here the caged heart of spell breaking, basically a small buff to make it more relevant in this season. And again, we have the temerity, again, another small buff to make it more viable. And now this is the big thing that I do want to spend a few minutes talking about, and that is the mob density update happening in 1.1.1. So as you can see, they've shared some photos here of what it's going to look like before and after. And basically this is in the Novistrov Deepwood Dungeon. And as you can see beforehand, we have about 123 by my count mobs in the total area. Now again, it's kind of hard to count as they can be pretty stacked up on each other, but 123 is pretty close. If we move on to the after, we're looking at up to 190 to 200. Now this is about a 50% increase in mob density. Now they did not give us the exact numbers, but what we can see from the 2 pictures, we can estimate it's going to be about a 50% increase. Now this is going to be huge not only for XP in dungeons, but just making it feel like you're not walking through a dead wasteland. This, I think, is a super positive change, and I am very happy that they're introducing it into the game. Now we have some other changes, some rewards and difficulty changes in patch 1.1.1. They will be increasing the difficulty of World Tier 3 and 4 bosses. And the reason they state is right now, most bosses in World Tier 3 and 4 can be 1 or 2 shot by most builds in the game. Now they don't want this to be the case. They don't want it to make sure that it's incredibly hard, and they are actually helping us out by increasing the damage. What they are doing is actually making it so you get a guaranteed legendary drop from every single boss. Now I think this is a very good change, making them a little bit harder, a little bit more engageable, and giving us the guaranteed legendary. I really like this change. I think it's going to make the game a little bit better. Now treasure goblins currently have a 50% chance to drop legendaries, but after this they will drop at least 1 with a 100% chance, which is great. They're treasure goblins. They're supposed to drop really cool loot, so I'm definitely glad they're doing this. Now another really important change is the respec cost will be reduced by 40% in patch 1.1.1, which I am so excited for because bringing you guys these different builds has been so incredibly expensive, switching builds to make videos about. Very excited about this change. And again, we have another big change with inventory. They'll be adding another stash tab. Now in the stream, they did make sure to say that this stash tab will be purchased with in-game currencies with gold. Now how it works right now, every stash tab is going up from $100,000. So currently with this new stash tab, it will cost 400,000 gold to purchase. That won't be bad, and I'm honestly very glad they're doing it because right now we don't have enough, and I'm definitely glad they're increasing that. Now they are also changing the elixirs, which currently stack at either 49 or 50, and they're going up to 99. I'm very happy this is going to change, as if you do a lot of hell tides, you've probably noticed you get a ton of elixirs, and sometimes you end up having to throw them away. Now another change that they're actually reverting, this is what we've had before, is the leave dungeon cooldown was originally 3 seconds. And in one of the earlier patches, they actually kind of nerfed it down to 5 seconds, so you had to stand there longer. Now, after some outrage from the community, they decided to bring it back down to 3 seconds, so it's not quite as frustrating getting hit by characters when you're trying to teleport. Now, we have some huge news also. Cold Enchanted and Backstabber modifiers are being removed from Nightmare Dungeons. Now, the reason they said this is because they statistically kill far more players than any other aspects in the game. Or sorry, not aspects, modifiers, I should state. Now, these two will be completely gone. Now, they did not state what will happen to the current Nightmare Dungeons that we have in our inventory that have these. Whether we need to delete them to get rid of them permanently, or they just will not work when you load into them. We'll have to test that at the patch. Now, at the end of the stream, they did make sure to do a Q&A segment, and we're going to go over a couple things they answered in that. So they are making changes to crowd control to make it more fun and interesting. Now, I'm definitely glad about that, because in the game right now, I am currently using a very strong crowd control build, and it can be kind of clunky with the current mechanics, whether it grabs stuff, doesn't, how it grabs them, and the hits that's caused when it grabs them. So I'm definitely glad that they're looking into that. Now, we have a really exciting news here that Imperfectly Balanced, which is a Necromancer passive that is incredibly strong, is being addressed in patch 1.1.1. And the reason is it is currently broken, and I mean very broken. So I'm glad that they are looking into that. And they didn't say they're fixing it, they said they're addressing it, which means they could be changing it, they could be removing it, they could be doing who knows what to it. But I'm glad they're at least doing something with it, as right now it is broken. Now, they are making some changes to resistances and the impact and meaningful of them. So basically, if you stack resistances, you're going to be getting more money for your work with it, meaning you're going to be tankier than last time, which is a great thing, because right now resistances kind of feel like they're not worth stacking into. It's better to stack into, you know, shields and other stuff to keep yourself alive than resistances. So I'm definitely glad they're making that adjustment. Now, another huge thing is that they are working on mounts. They aren't currently happy with the bug that got introduced with Season 1, where the boost was not stacking and regenerating properly on mounts, and they're overall working on the total movement of the mounts and how they are controlled, which they are definitely clunky right now. Glad to see they're taking a look at that. Now, they're fixing the memory leak, or the VRAM issue, as they stated, in patch 1.1.1, which is great, as I have experienced this many times and has caused very few, but a couple corrupt recordings, which definitely is not fun. Overall, basically, it was just making your PC run super hard and to the point where the game would start lagging, and you had to reset the game to stop the memory leak. It was pretty common and really causing a lot of problems, so I'm definitely glad this is going away. Overpower naturally happens, and we'll have different vectors to scale it. You can never change the baseline value, which is a design choice. Now, they didn't give us a ton of information here, as they're trying to keep this pretty quiet, I think, for the next big patch. Along with our last comment, zooming in and out may be discussed in a future campfire with the engineering team. Now, again, we did not get a ton of information on any of these last comments, but overall, with this campfire chat, I am very, very happy. The changes they've made, I think, will definitely improve the game, especially the changes to XP in the Nightmare Dungeons. So I'm definitely happy to see that. Maybe you'll make it so you don't have to grind quite as hard to get to 100, which I would appreciate, as I have to get a lot of characters there. Now, the team's long-term commitment is to bring viability to as many builds as possible, which I definitely think is the right way to approach it. They need to stop nerfing builds, and they need to start buffing the ones that aren't being used. And I think this is a great step into the repair of Season 1. And I do want to say one last thing as we close out here, to please keep in mind that they did state Season 1 is going to be the least content available out of any season. This was the starting point, not the normal. So please keep that in mind. I am pretty happy with Season 1 overall. There's a video coming up this weekend about everything with my thoughts about Season 1, what needs to change, what needs to stay the same, what am I happy with, and what I am not. Now, overall, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you learned something, and hopefully with this, you didn't have to watch the 2-hour live stream. So with that, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video.